overview of the program now. That includes, what the SDIP portfolio was and how our program fitted into that, and also a little bit about what we've done to support the program, some reflection on the last couple of years. So as most of you know, this program was part of a wider DFAT investment, the Sustainable Development Investment Portfolio, which was a major program to support regional partners in South Asia to improve integrated management of water, energy and food in 3 major river basins, and with a particular focus on addressing climate challenges and the interests of women and girls. And it's important to recognise that, we were part of a bigger portfolio, because it did guide the investments towards those portfolio outcomes, which included strengthened mechanisms for regional collaboration, critical knowledge being generated and used, and an improved enabling environment. And ACIAR's particular contribution was in terms of agriculture and maximising agriculture's contributions to sustainable food systems for improved food, energy and water management. So I'll just hand over to Kuhu now to talk a little bit more about where we worked and why that was.
Thank you, Tamara, and good morning, everyone. Our focus on the Eastern Gangetic Plains of Bangladesh, India, and Nepal Terai. There were 2 compelling reasons for us to work there. The first one was that the governments of each of these countries wanted us to move to the east from the northwest, which was traditionally where we worked, and because there was potential and optimal groundwater availability and challenges as well. The second reason was the pressures on the food system in the EGP is immense. It's home to more than 400 million people, with 300 million engaged in agriculture. And there are overarching problems like climate change and changes in demography. We will hear more about our context in the next presentation.
Thanks, Kuhu.
The ACIAR SDIP program was planned for a 12-year period, starting in 2012 with scoping. And the first phase, the sustainable resilient farming systems intensification, was conservation agriculture based intensification, CASI, field-based project with focus on zero till and mechanization. And we had to widen the scope of the project to look at the drivers and trends in the food system of the region and reach out to larger people through scaling and understand opportunities and constraints for sustainable food systems.
Thanks, Kuhu. So as you mentioned, I guess we just wanted to give an example. This is a diagram of the food system and just show how the work has, from the basis of SRFSI, as Kuhu said. So in phase 1, the focus was really on understanding options for addressing challenges at the farm level, as well as obviously understanding that context. But in phase 2, we've really moved into the wider food system, understanding the wider context of the food system and important drivers and trends, and that includes, I guess, natural, human and food systems, and looking at some of those drivers and the institutional environment and supporting services. So that's really just to show that we started from a core focus in SRFSI and then have moved to a wider systems exploration. So just quickly to look at the way the phase 2 program was structured, there were 4 main areas of work, and this was regional food systems foresight, a component on policy and institutional work, continued work in field scale innovation. So that included the SRFSI scaling and then learning from scaling, as well as looking at some other biophysical constraints. And then a whole lot of work that in terms of analytical studies that really filled the gaps, identified emerging research opportunities and filled gaps. And then overarching that was the work that Kuhu and I have been undertaking in terms of coordination, synthesis, and communications. So the work, again, I guess to look at it from a bit of a different perspective, it's really explored farming systems in the context of those wider food systems and within the broader political economy. And the sustainable farming systems, I guess, is the basis, as we've said. So that's based on conservation, agriculture, mechanisation, and with an understanding that groundwater is a key enabler in this region. And then Foresight provides an overview for that. And there are key themes coming out of the work that we'll explore further on in the review meeting, things like gender, the water, energy, food nexus, institutions, climate change, and knowledge sharing mechanisms. And I think it's also really important to recognise that we have had a cross-cutting research approaches, and we'll talk again we'll talk a little bit more about that further into the review meeting. And I'd like to hand over to Kuhu, because I think one of the main something that's been really important in this program has been partnerships, Kuhu. So can you just talk a little bit more about who was working in the program and how they were engaged?
Thank you, Tamara. We had more than 40 partners in the project because the project was multi-location and which was a benefit and a challenge in management from national and local research and development partners, CGIAR institutes like CIMMYT, IFPRI, IMI, and Australian universities. We required the new partners because we were moving from research to implementation and scaling to policy and investments with skill sets outside of agriculture. Convergence with other programs, state and development for sustainability, and the capacity building was a big component where we wanted to create a critical mass of emerging researchers in partner countries. And I will now ask Tamara, one of the challenges that we have faced was for the last 18 months is the COVID pandemic. And it has delayed surveys, projects, dates, and reviews, and a lot of foresight work. Despite this, we have still continued to deliver through some innovative ways like phone surveys and ICT.
Thanks, Kuhu. I don't think you can have a program or a project meeting at this time and not talk about the challenges of COVID. So it's good to recognise that. Thank you. So just in terms of what Kuhu and I have done to support the ACIAR SDIP program and really what our role has been in the last few years, the key activities have been in terms of, the aim of the component was really to make sure that the partnership work was coordinated, research outputs were synthesised and communicated, and that the program was linked into other, aligned with other initiatives and processes. So the key activities have really been in synthesis of related ACIAR research in the EGP relevant to our outcomes, communication of program results and project and outputs, creating links with other parts of the SDIP program and other ACIAR projects, and coordination of a regional steering committee. So we just want to talk a little bit more in detail about some of those activities. So in terms of integration, there were three kind of levels of integration of the different projects. I think something we haven't actually said, Kuhu, is that we had more than 20 projects in this program. Some of them were very big, like SRFSI was ended up being almost a decade of investment and $10 million, and ranging down to pretty small kind of discrete activities that were delivered by just one partner. So there's a real breadth of kinds of projects, size of projects, and not to mention, the topics that people were researching. So there was definitely a need to integrate within the program. And so that was things like linking projects who directly shared activities and target groups or outputs, communication again, annual meetings to link project teams, developing key documents that describe how different projects fit together. And I would say that was mostly to benefit DFAT, and then designing key activities to create an opportunity for shared work. And some of that was done in the foresight component. So there was also a need to integrate with the other SDIP partners. And that really was more in terms of, I guess, joining the meetings and providing the materials, reporting materials we were required to do, sharing documents, planning joint activities, which had a couple planned, but they fell through because of COVID. But we did join other partners such as CSIRO, for example, who with their work in the Kamala Basin in Nepal, and then also linking with or integrating with other ACIAR projects. So we did definitely think about the other ACIAR projects that were working alongside us and also had gone before, and then tried to link with those project leaders and different activities where it made sense. So just as an idea of some of the reports and synthesis, obviously there was annual reporting to DFAT, and then also we've reported on some of the kind of synthesis themes that have come out. So in terms of climate change, or looking at, what happened in phase 1 and trying to tie that up and use that as the basis for SDIP phase 2. In terms of communications, we've taken a multi-pronged approach. So we have a website that's had over 22,000 page views and 8,000 visitors. We held webinars once COVID hit so that we could still let project, individual projects share their kind of quite detailed results. And it was the only way that we could get together, obviously. We've commissioned films from Connor Ashley that highlight different areas of work. We've used social media linked to ACIAR and partners' accounts, and we've had a semi-regular newsletter that has more than 400 recipients. And the aim of that was really to reach different audiences with, the information from different project results packaged in different ways. Kuhu, one of the important things when we started SDIP phase 2 was that we built on again the steering committee or advisory committee from SRFSI. So I was wondering if you could just talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, thank you, Tamara. Currently, the steering committee consists of 13 members from ACIAR and the region. And I'm very happy to report that 50% of them are women. They are high-level leaders representing different fields of expertise, planning commissions, development agencies, academia, and the private sector. The criteria to nominate members was to maintain a balance between the 3 participating countries, that diversity in expertise and gender balance. In each of the meetings, the Australian High Commissioners of that country or ambassadors participated as special invitees. I now would like to go on to the opportunities for public diplomacy that the ACIAR SDIP program created. The ACIAR SDIP in both the phases field to policy generated many public diplomacy opportunities as desired by DFAT and ACIAR. The posts, especially high commissioners, ambassadors, visited field sites, met high-level members of the government, and advocated the impact on the communities. Stories on social media and press coverage were highlights of and PD outcomes.
Thank you, Kuhu. And I think now we'd like to reflect a little bit on what our experience has been in this program. Certainly, ACIAR SDIP was a different kind of program to the way ACIAR projects normally work. And so there's been a definite opportunity over the last now 3 years to think about the lessons and challenges. So Kuhu, can you talk first about I guess, some of the challenges that we have experienced in trying to help facilitate a program within ACIAR and SDIP and the kind of broader DFAT portfolio?
Oh, for sure. That kept us me and Tamara very busy. It was planned as a 12-year program. It was cut short to 8 years due to change in funders' DFAT's priorities in South Asia. Tamara and I had to keep a close eye on field level activities and participation in the regional and national training workshops to maintain agenda focus. And we had to deal with the bureaucratic processes of external diverse organizations and ACIAR's internal processes. And we didn't have a blueprint to follow.
Yeah, you're right. They were some challenges, you're right. And the other thing was in terms of the fact that we did have a very diverse stakeholder network and the fact that I think, Kuhu, you did a great job of identifying, additional people to bring into the SDIP program, and then bringing them together and, helping people work together was another kind of challenge too. But despite the challenges, I think we can also reflect on some of the benefits or some of the principles that we can see that worked well and that we were quite intentional about in this program. Can you talk a little bit more in detail about those?
Sure. We used the guiding principles for a program approach, supported partners at multiple levels, local ownership, example, foresight, Nepal work, smaller pieces of targeted research, engaged local experts. We wanted to have something to see, example, ACIAR, SRFSI as the basis to work as the backbone of the program. Created space to interact in meetings and workshops. We have been intentional in engaging with people from different project sectors, ages, experience levels, and gender parity. Local and wider impacts of all the projects were focused on. We wanted to create demand at all levels for new technologies, institutions, and the research outputs.
Thank you, Kuhu. And I think, interestingly, we actually came up with these, we reflected on these kind of principles when we were thinking about the SRFSI program quite a while ago. And then when we looked at it again, we thought they really also apply to the program approach as well. So I think some final lessons in terms of our experience and what we think is needed for a program to work effectively is that it's really important to have dedicated resources for program management, coordination, and communication. I think often we assume things like that will just happen, but actually it takes quite a lot of effort and time, as Kuhu and I can attest, that we've spent almost full time over the last few years kind of helping to facilitate these parts of the program. Adaptability is definitely key. So as Kuhu said as well, the time scales and timeframes changed quite frequently in the program. And so being able to be adaptable is really key. And I think the other thing about that is that you need people to support you who are happy for that adaptability. So I'd like to give our thanks to Robin and Eric in ACIAR who have been supportive of that need to be adaptable. The other is that having a range of projects can help reinforce results. So both across scales, as Kuhu mentioned before, and then also across sectors. So, I guess some examples there are in looking at, when we look at our high level, the high level foresight results, we also see things happening at in the projects that work at the local level that are, that are demonstrating those links and reinforcing what we've learnt. This program has demonstrated the benefit of long-term engagement. So again, we go back to SRFSI being the first project and that we've built on. And I think having those long-term partnerships has been the difference between what we could do in the 3 years of SDIP phase 2 and what, and what would have been much harder if that had been the start, if we'd been starting at kind of zero. And I think, we said before that, we didn't have a blueprint to follow. So that was a bit of a challenge. which it definitely was. But if we flip it around, we can think that that no blueprint was actually gave us quite a lot of freedom and flexibility. So in that way, it was quite exciting that we could do things a little bit differently, engage with different partners, take things a step, you know, a step along the road, the development sphere rather than the research, compared to a lot of ACIAR programs and projects. And I think that's been really exciting. And I think trying to undertake a program approach with very constrained, I guess, activities and outputs, you know, designated from the start would have been quite difficult. So thanks everyone. Thanks Kuhu first for your inputs, and then thanks everyone for listening.
Thanks.